France is in an era of instability once again. Marine Le Pen came out with a speech and she said that France has now entered an era of uncertainty and anxiety. Of course, we see the riots that are going on in France right now. France is burning due to some 17-year-old boy who refused to stop for the police and got himself shot in the process. And so all the minorities out there, they are rioting, they are looting, they are stealing buses, driving cars into shopping malls, and so on. And we see France on fire. And of course, during this whole time, what was Emmanuel Macron doing? He was at an Elton John concert, enjoying music, enjoying Elton John, watching Elton John entertain people, while France was burning to the ground. And it's not just the minorities. We also see French workers protesting against Emmanuel Macron's decision to up the retirement age from 62 to 64. And they protested against that. They rioted against that. And of course, also the Yellow Vest back in 2018. So France, this is not the first time France has been in a volatile situation, but it's part of France's history to be unstable. Now, this instability in France throughout its history, is it all prophesied in the pages of the Bible? Well, before I get on with some of these scriptures, I want to offer you this booklet, France in Bible Prophecy. And we will put the link down below where you can order this booklet. And of course, we will send you the booklet when you order it within 1 business day. Take a look at this, and I'll be right back.
You, O King, were watching, and behold, a great image. This great image, whose splendor was excellent, stood before you, and its form was awesome. This image's head was of fine gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. You watched while a stone was cut out without hands, which struck the image on its feet of iron and clay, and broke them in pieces. And the stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth.
If you know anything at all about our YouTube channel and our website, britishisrael.ca, then you know that we believe and can prove that the house of Israel got taken away in the Assyrian captivity, and they settled between the Black and the Caspian Sea and never returned to Palestine. Instead, they settled there, and they were known by other names. The Assyrians called them the Bit Cumri. The Greeks called these people the Celts, the Cimmerians, the Scythians. And these peoples from the Black and the Caspian Sea migrated from there into Europe. And there they settled. Many of the tribes of Israel settled in the European nations like the Dutch and Belgium and so on. And of course settled into Britain, and Britain colonized the entire world, and they became a great company, a commonwealth of many nations, which is prophesied in the Bible. And the United States became a great single powerful nation, which is prophesied in the Bible. And we've proved this for many, many years, that we are, in the English-speaking world, the house of Israel. And that the peoples of northwestern Europe are part of the tribes of the house of Israel. And of course, we prove that to you in our literature that we have on our website. Well, what about the French people? Are they part of the lost 10 tribes of Israel? Well, we believe and can prove that the French people are the tribe of Reuben that you find in the Bible. Now, when you look at the tribal names of the tribe of Reuben, the sub-tribes of the tribe of Reuben, in Numbers, the 26th chapter, in verse 5, here it talks about Reuben, the eldest son of Israel, the children of Reuben, Hanok. And we have Palu and Herzon and Carmi. And these sub-tribes, these names you can find among the Scythians, among the Cimmerians, between the Black and the Caspian Sea. And then you see these names come into Europe. Changed, of course, because language does change as migrations take place, but the names are there, and you can trace them back to the tribes of Reuben. Notice what Yard Divity says here in his book, The Tribes, an excellent book, and it's very detailed when it comes to the migrations of the house of Israel. And it says here on page 162, the name is also given as Ruberari, and this name in the Hebrew is another form for Reuben. And it says these Rubenari may have been similar to the Franks' own name for themselves and to have been based on the name of their ancestor, which additional evidence shows to have been Reuben, whose name in Hebrew could also be rendered Rubar. Then he talks about one of the sub-tribes of Reuben. There's a region east of the Rhine called Westphalia, and this Phalia, wherein the Franks have been sojourning, is derived most likely from that of Phalu, second son of Reuben. And then he also talks about the people of the Carmi, the sons of Carmi, which represent the Charny in France. And all these groups, these subgroups that you find here in Numbers, the 26th chapter, are all, he says, all these groups were amongst the settlers of France. And so when you look at the migrations of the Phalu, the Carmi, and so on, and you see them in Scythia, and you see these names going up through the Black and the Caspian Sea, and these tribal names continue and settle into France, well, it's pretty obvious that Reuben, the tribe of Reuben, is the nation of France today. And we prove that to you in that booklet, France in Bible Prophecy. Now, there's a prophecy in Genesis, the 49th chapter, of the latter days. As it says here in Genesis 49, it says, Jacob called his sons. He says, gather yourselves together that I may tell you that which shall befall you in the last days, the latter days, our time today, our modern day in which we live. And then he goes through tribe after tribe, and he says this of Reuben. He says, Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might, and the beginning of my strength, the excellency of dignity, the excellency of power. And in the latter days, this is a prophecy for the latter days, they would have power and they would have dignity or pride. And of course, no one can deny the fact that the French are a proud people. They are always trying to preserve their culture, always trying to preserve their language. We see that here in Canada with the Quebecers. And it says here in Stephen Collins' book, The Lost 10 Tribes of Israel, found on page 399, he says, what nation in modern Europe has substantial power and pride, but less power than the English or the Americans? And of course, that's France. It talks about how France was only second to the United States and Britain when it came to power in the world, colonial power and so on. The biggest colonial power was Britain, and second only to that, to Britain, was of course France. And that's why it says here that you shall not excel, verse 4. That Joseph, verse 26, would be the chief among his brethren. Even though Reuben was the firstborn, because he, as it says here, you went up to your father's bed, then defoulest thou it. He went up to my couch. He, of course, had an affair with one of Jacob's concubines. And so because of that, he shall not excel. And that Joseph would be the chief among the tribes of Israel and not Reuben. And notice what it says here. that after the English and the Americans, the French are the next strongest nation in the Western Alliance. France became a populous nation and also had a substantial colonial empire of its own. The French are famous for emotional volatility. And that's why it says here, verse 4, that you shall be unstable as water. And that is throughout France's history, that has been true throughout France's history of instability, the French Revolution, what we see today, and so on. And notice what it says here. From the Encyclopedia Americana, it says here, during the 70 years of the Third Republic, more than 100 cabinets succeeded one another in France, with an average tenure in office of less than 8 months. The main cause of this instability, notice the Encyclopedia Americana calls it instability in France, was the lack of disciplined parties. The average lifespan of governments was shorter than in the Third Republic. So, France would be unstable like water, and because of its instability, it wouldn't excel. It wouldn't become the leader tribe of Israel. That, of course, belonged to Joseph. Now, when you look at the history of Reuben as well, Reuben, of course, he defiled Jacob's couch. He gave in to many of his appetites. The word French has become a synonym for passion and physical appetites. It is a common adjective for nouns associated with sensuality, eroticism, French perfume, French kisses, French films, French cut fashions. Paris has the world's most famous girly shows. And it talks about the French giving in to French gourmet and so on, giving in to their physical appetites, sexual appetites and so on. And we see that when you look at the history of Reuben in the book of Genesis. We see in Genesis, the 30th chapter, verse 14, of him gathering mandrakes, an aphrodisiac. And of course, one of the symbols of France is mandrakes. As it says here in Dividy's book, page 165. According to the Midrash, the symbol of Reuben was mandrakes. Reuben had found mandrakes in the field and brought them to his mother Leah. Leah used these mandrakes to hire the attentions of her husband away from Rachel. Mandrakes traditionally had aphrodisiac qualities, and Reuben, Genesis 35:22, is recalled as once having acted irregularly with Bilhah, the father's concubine. Now, rightly or wrongly, the French historically have had an international reputation for romantic proclivities. The mandrake is described as having a purple and white flower. Perhaps this gave rise to the white lily, the fleur de lis, the traditional symbol of the French monarchy. And so this was a symbol of France, the fleur de lis, and of course this goes back to the Bible with mandrakes. So it's obvious who the French are. When you look at the French symbolism, when you look at French history, it's instability, the French Revolution and so on, which is prophesied in the Bible, and we show you that in that booklet. The French Revolution and so on, it is obvious that the French are of the tribe of Reuben. And it says here in verse 4 that Reuben would be unstable as water. And that's exactly what we're seeing today. Instability. Marine Le Pen says we are entering into an era of uncertainty and anxiety. And so this is what's happening in France today. What you're seeing in France today is prophesied in the pages of the Bible. And of course, on top of that, we are seeing the end of the EU. If France falls, which most likely it will, because when you look at the history of Reuben, when the pressure's on, Reuben caves to the pressure. And we see that also in history, as it says here. As it says here, Frank also displayed a Reubenite trait in World War II. This is on page 401 of Stephen Collins' book. When pressured by Nazi might, France quickly yielded and chose to coexist via the French Vichy government. Even though France also had an empire and a powerful fleet to help carry on the war against the Nazis, they decided to throw in the towel. And it says this is a tendency of their forefather Reuben to coexist with evil instead of opposing it. And are they just going to continue to coexist with this evil that's going on right now in France? With this huge minority that hate the French. They hate the nation, even though they live there. They hate everything that France stands for. Is France, are they going to cave to the pressure? Are they just going to continue to coexist with this evil that's lurking in their own country? You know, many of the ex-generals of the army told Macron that we're on the brink of civil war, and he didn't listen. He didn't listen to those ex-generals. And now look what's happening. So the pressure's on, and most likely Reuben is going to cave, as he always does, which you read of in the book of Genesis. So what you're seeing now is prophesied in the pages of the Bible. Now, if you want to know more about the tribe of Reuben, and you want to get all the details of his migrations and more of the prophecies of Reuben, I urge you to get this booklet. The link is down below where you can order this booklet, France in Bible Prophecy. And don't forget to log on to our website, britishisrael.ca. We got a lot of free literature on there as well. This is Peter Salemi saying goodbye, friends, and I'll see you here next time on the Watchman program.